My parents arrived the next day, but my body seemed to have eliminated all the remains of whatever drug they had given me, and I felt almost myself again. Damien was sent to hospital and an ambulance in Lincoln, the closest big town, after Rick luckily managed to stop the hemorrhage. I started sobbing when Monty and Rick told me about it when I finally woke up some hours later. If Rick hadn't reacted so fast and so delinquent, Damien would have died from the blood loss. Thank God Dr. Ward told us that the vital points had been only grazed by the knife, and Damien had a good chance of surviving the ordeal if he arrived quickly to the hospital and received the blood transfusion and surgical treatment. That seemed to be the case, fortunately, as the Lincoln Hospital assured us in the telegram the next morning. And about the criminal, well, he refused to talk at first, but the police took him to town within the hour. Our footman had found poor Dr. Ward tied down inside his wardrobe, and that added to my murdered attempt at Damien's would lead the villain to the gallows. My mother was horrified and upset and kept wringing her hands in anguish, but my father reacted surprisingly calmly. I will find out what has happening here, Alex. Don't worry. I have a couple of friends who work in the criminal law field. We'll make that man talk, like it or not. Oh dear, but there must be a mistake. Why would anyone want to murder our Alex? My father just spit his pipe and stared by the window, deep in thought. They left the next day, but they came back again some days later in the weekend. Dad, I didn't expect you to return so soon. I'm okay now, and I've come back to my lessons, so you don't have to worry anymore. My father looked thoroughly upset. He left my mother having a tea with the head teacher and asked me to go for a stroll. What's wrong, Dad? Please tell me at once. He sighed and avoided my eyes. We come from Lincoln, Alex. We have talked to your excellent lawyer, and he let me read his confession. So he finally confessed? And who paid him to murder me? Was it a mistake, as we thought? He shook his head with sadness and then stopped his steps and placed a hand on my shoulder, looking me in the eye. I'm sorry for what I'm about to tell you. Your mother and I both love you, you know that, but we have been 100% sincere with you. My heart clenched at hearing his words. I didn't like the turn of conversation. I wanted to hear that everything had been a huge mistake and be reassured that nothing else would happen again. What do you remember about your Uncle Edward, Alex? I stared at him at a loss for words, but after a moment I frowned and tried to answer him. He was a younger brother, and he died a year ago from a blood disease. I saw him perhaps a few times in my entire life. Why? What does he have to do with anything? Everything, I regret to say. Alex, I am really sorry, but he was your real father. Your mother and I just took care of you since you were 2 years old. What? I couldn't believe my ears. Was that a prank? If it was, then it was the worst prank I had heard in my life. That's not true, right? Why would I lie to you now? We wanted to tell you when you came of age, but this has forced us to open the Pandora box earlier than we wished. I shook my head in disbelief. My Uncle Edward? But nonsense! That couldn't be true! Does it mean Aunt Emily is my mother? My father pulled her face and sighed loudly. No, she couldn't give Edward any children, but before they got married, when Edward and Emily were already engaged, it seems he met another woman and had a child with her. I fisted my hands. I felt torn between angry and upset. He married Emily and had promised that, but the woman came 2 years later with the kid because she couldn't take care of him on her own and wanted to give him to adoption. I looked away from my father's face. I know how this follows. Uncle Edward gave the child, me, to Mom and you to raise him because Aunt Emily refused to let the kid stay with them. He nodded. He would have liked to raise you himself. Of that you can be sure, but his wife was furious about the whole issue and demanded you You were sent to an orphanage. Of course, Edward would have never allowed that. So yes, your mother and I took care of you as if you were ours. We never thought of you as different from our own children, Alex. I know. And I did. I never felt different from my brothers and sisters. If at all, I felt more spoiled than them. But I always thought it was because I was the youngest one and I came some years apart from the rest of my siblings. But what has all this to do with the criminals? My father looked really uncomfortable and kept playing with his until pipe. Your Aunt Emily wasn't very happy with the outcome of Edward's will. We all knew that, but we never thought it would come to this. The man who attacked you belongs to a group of burglars, well known to the police. Some of them infiltrated the school at the beginning of the term, forging their recommendation letters and working here as maids and servants. I nodded. That was our suspicions, although I refused to believe it. You really should have told us instead of taking only about your lessons in your letters, Alex. I didn't want to worry you, especially Mother. I know. So it was Aunt Emily who paid those people to murder me? How could she hate me so much? I never did anything to her. It wasn't my fault that I was born. It was because of the will, I've told you. Edward cared for you, Alex. He regretted so much not being able to spend time with you and getting to know you. I have his letters saved at home, if you ever want to read them. I was starting to come to terms about the idea of Uncle Edward being my real father, but it still formed a painful knot in my stomach, just to try to think about it. I guessed I would need some time to mull over the idea. Perhaps one day I will. He left you his house and half of his money and properties. He left Emily a generous rent, but she was outraged anyway when he read the will. Startled, I opened my eyes wide. That was a lot. My Uncle Edward had been a man of good standing. My father smiled at seeing my face. Yes, Alex, he will have quite a lot when you turn 21. That's why we decided to send you to St. Michael's and then Oxford or Cambridge. Our village school suddenly seemed too modest for you. It was more than alright for me. My siblings all studied there and they have grown up to be hard-working and responsible adults with good careers. Yes, I agree, but you can get more. You have the chance, Alex, so it would be foolish to let it pass. And now, what will happen to Aunt Emily? One of my colleagues, a specialist in criminal law, is carrying out a formal investigation against her. The Raj confession doesn't leave many loose ends, thought, so I'm sure she will end her days in prison, if not worse. It was horrifying. I almost feel bad for her, but I couldn't understand how she felt at all. She didn't know me after all. How could she want me dead? Just because of her hurt pride? I shook my head in disgust. For now, you should focus only on your studies. You told us you were a bit baffled because of how high the level was here, didn't you? Sadly true, but I'm trying, I swear. I can't promise outstanding grades or anything, but I do my best. My father grinned and squeezed my shoulder. That's what I wanted to hear. Let's go back and try to stay calm in front of your mother. She was very worried about us having this conversation. I will reassure her later. Of course, it must have been hard for her too. I had an afterthought when we were reaching the front garden. Dad, are you going back home right from here? I guess. Why? Could you give me a ride to Lincoln? I can come back to school by train this evening. He smiled at me with fondness. Do you want to visit your friend in hospital? Of course we will give you a ride and then we'll return you back to school. Don't worry, you don't need to take a train. In the end, Monty and Rick joined us in my father's car. We told the head teacher we were bringing Damon his school books so he could work a bit while he was hospitalized, and of course he agreed at once and let them come. A week had gone by since the attack, and during all the time I had been thinking about Damien's almost constantly. I needed to talk with him. He had a room to himself in the second floor of the hospital, with nice views to the garden and plenty of natural light. My head pounded madly when he pushed the door open and I finally got to see him. These past days, the sight of Damien pale and lying on his own blood had been chasing my dreams and my awake hours alike. It was like living in a nightmare. So I couldn't be more grateful when a slightly pale but composed Damien greeted us from his hospitalite bed. He had bandage over his torso, but apart from that, he looked healthy. Monty rushed to hug him, a wide smile of relief on his face, and Damien flinched a bit at the pressure, but kept a brave face. Monty, you're squeezing him too much. Oops, I'm sorry. Are you okay? Of course, I won't break. How are things at school? Same as always. There was a stir, of course, and all the servants were thoroughly investigated. The police were coming and going. For a couple of days we were quite entertained. In the end, 3 of the new servants have been arrested and sent here to Lincoln, and now the school is again as quiet as always. Damien chuckled quietly, clutching his bandage while doing so, as if laughing, even softly, was painful right then. Well, I'm glad to have been able to provide some distraction, and of course I'm glad that everything ended well. He looked askance at me when he said that. Monty and Rick exchanged a pointed look and then glanced at me. Alex, I think Rick and I will wait in the corridor for a little while. I assure you have things to talk about privately. My parents, who were waiting by the door, heard him and nodded in agreement, and the 4 of them left the room, using the door behind them. I found myself alone with Damien for the first time in a month, although the situation wasn't at all what I would have liked it to be. I approached the bed and made an effort to look Damien in the eye. As soon as our eyes looked, I felt the first tears start to gather on the corner of my eyes. Hey, don't you dare to cry on me. Come here, sit down on the bed. I did so, sitting down carefully, casting my eyes down. Why did you do that? Throwing yourself on top of that man instead of crying for help? It's my usual way of doing stuff, I guess. I couldn't be sure of him being the criminal until I caught him red-handed. But you knew all the others were waiting in the corridor outside our bedroom, but you knew... I researched a bit on my own. I didn't have enough evidence to go to the police, but I had some hints. I wanted to be the first in joining the dots and saving the day. I chuckled with a bit of sadness. So you had a hero complex after all? Who would have said it? I told you I wouldn't allow anything bad to happen to you, remember? I wanted to protect you. I raised my head to look at him in disbelief. That was unexpected. The unshed tears started to prickle in my eyes, and my vision turned a bit blurry. I just wanted to redeem myself in front of you. I acted as the biggest of fools, so I had to fix it one way or another. I know you ended hating me. When I realized I had ruined whatever feelings you could have for me, it was too late. A big tear started to roll down my cheek, and I didn't do anything to stop it this time. You cared? My voice trembled as soon my whole body started to shudder with sobs. Alex, please. I can barely move. Come closer here. I rested my forehead on his shoulder, and his hands wrapped around me at once. I wetted his pajama shirt with my tears, relieved to feel his long fingers running through my hair again. I'm sorry, Alex. I wasn't sure how I felt about you, so it was easier to act as if you were just someone to pass the time with, someone unimportant. I didn't know I was hurting you, not until you snapped at me. His familiar scent was mixed with the hospital smells, disinfectant and rough blankets, but it was reassuring all the same. It was still Damien. So you started following me around to protect me. I had promised you, but the more I followed you from afar, the more painfully obvious it was for me that I had lost you for real. I started to think of what I had with you and how I could have involved, and cursed myself again and again. I sat up and wiped my face with my sleeves. I made an effort and looked at him with a straight face. How do you think we could have been? He reached for my hand and caressed the back with his thumb. When he smiled, his whole face bloomed. I feel happy when you are by my side, comfortable with myself. I don't need to pretend to be someone else. I feel accepted. I want to make you feel happy by my side too. I will do whatever it takes. A slow smile started to pull the corner of my mouth, and I wished we weren't in a public place so I could kiss him. I contented myself with grabbing his hand in mine and squeezing them. Then, get well soon so we can be together again. He opened his eyes wide in surprise, and a crooked grin tucked his features. Man, how I had missed his stupid, naughty smile. A knock on the door told us our long time had ended. We stayed in Damien's room for a while, chattering about gossips, cricket matches, and school subjects, and when the time to come back to St. Michael's arrived, I promised Damien I would come back every Sunday to visit him. And bring him schoolwork, of course. Damien stayed 2 whole months in hospital. I kept my promise and visited him on Sundays, sometimes with Monty and Rick, and sometimes on my own, during the Christmas break. I also tried to keep my promise to my father. Yes, I still thought of him as my father, and will always do, and spent all my afternoons studying hard with my friends in the library. Thanks to Rick tutoring, I was starting to feel more at ease about my final grades. Lessons and exams started to be routine instead of a nightmare fraught with distress. But school was just a nuisance in the corner of my mind when the day of Damien's return to St. Michael's approached. Monty mocked me, but it was just a friendly joke. A jab without sting, and I could see in Rick's serious face that they understood, at least partly, what was going on with Damien and me. I felt a bit embarrassed when I realized how obvious I was being, but I couldn't help it. And since my friends would accept it without a word, it didn't make me feel so guilty. Perhaps, and only perhaps, there was nothing wrong in our kind of relationships, law-abiding or not. Time went by really fast from then on, and before I could notice, spring came and went, and summer was already there. As the days in St. Michael's came to an end, I started to feel a bit depressed. When we were all going to attend different universities, to my jogging, despite all my efforts, my final grades weren't as brilliant as they afforded me to entrance to Cambridge or Oxford, so I was considering my options. The hardest part was knowing that the next term it would be apart from Damien. I tried to keep a brave face and make the best of our time together, but it wasn't easy. Damien, on his part, had been somewhat uneasy to previous weeks. He was nice and attentive with me, and most of the time he hung out with Monty and Rick. Studying together, watching Monty's cricket trainings, he still was almost as bad as it as before, but it was fun to watch, or simply chattering about school and our plans of future. He still was a naughty lover, I thought. I didn't know how I would survive the whole summer holidays without him. So thinking about being forced to break up because of the distance was too much to handle. Here you're hiding again. I turned from my spot lazing on my bed to look at Damien, who was leaning against the door. Who's hiding? Obviously you. I have been looking for you for ages. Everybody is outside. It's almost summer and nobody but you thinks of staying in his room like a bat. I rode to face the wall. This bed is ignoring you. He chuckled and closed the door behind him and came to lie down with me, hugging me from my back. I tensed a little. We hadn't told Monty and Rick we would be in our bedroom, so they could come unannounced and at any given moment. Relax, they won't come for a while. Louis' father had brought his new car and he offered our mates a ride. Ah, nice. It is a tranny car? Sure, a very nice one. But I wanted to see you. Oh, I thought, did we really have enough time for that? I meant that I have something to talk with you. Oh no, I don't think I want to hear it. And if it's good news? I turned in his arms to face him. Good news? How is it even a possibility? Please tell me. Damien chuckled, his Adam's apple bobbing up and down. I kissed it softly. Hey, don't distract me now. How would you feel about nice twin bedroom in Corpus Christi College in Oxford or the upcoming academic year? It sounds fantastic. Is it where you're going to be? Almost correct. Guess again. I don't know then. It's where the two of us will be. I sat up on my bed and stared at Damien in disbelief. What? Damien, that won't be happen, you know it. Unless my father has talked to a couple of her committee fellows and convinced them that his generous donations granted him a favor or two. Really? But, Damien, why would your father ask for my admittance in Oxford? Perhaps I overdid a bit my reluctance to go to that bloody geezer of college my father is so fond of. And I told him the only thing that would alleviate my boredom while being there would be having my old pal from school with me. Oh my, you're the devil! Well, this devil has achieved a bedroom for ourselves during all our stay in Oxford. What do you think? I'm speechless. He faked a pout. And here I thought you would be eager to thank me accordingly. I laughed heartily and shook my head. He would never change, God bless him, I hope he wouldn't ever. With the thought of sharing at the very least of our next step in life together and my head spinning of happiness, I threw myself on top on him. Suddenly I was eager for summer to come, because after summer there would be an autumn in Oxford with Damien. Jawohl! Wir haben das gute Ende. Ah, schön. Ah, das ist fast doch süßer als das Ende mit Monty. Ah. Ach, das freut mich jetzt. Wir haben es geschafft, das gute Ende als erstes zu spielen. Yes. Und wir skippen dann nachher wieder zurück und spielen natürlich noch die 2 schlechten Enden, bevor wir uns dann endlich an Rick wagen und die ganze Geschichte zusammen mit Rick durchspielen. Yay! Oh, das war cool. Es freut mich direkt, wie das böse Ende ausgeht. Das klingt total seltsam, aber ich freue mich echt drauf zu wissen, wie das ausgeht. Und ich weiß gar nicht, wie weit ich zurückskippen muss, aber ich glaube bis zurück in die Kirche. Oder nee, zurück ins Klassenzimmer. Anstatt dass wir mit ihm sprechen, ignorieren wir ihn dann einfach. Ich glaube, da kommt das böse Relationship-Ending. Wir probieren es einfach aus. Wir skippen mal zurück zu dem Klassenzimmer. Aber jetzt würde ich mich erstmal verabschieden und meine Stimme ein bisschen schonen. Weil es tatsächlich schon wieder fast 2 Stunden sind, die ich aufnehme. Und bedanke mich dafür, dass ihr zugehört habt. Immer noch zuhört, weil komischerweise habe ich immer noch Zuschauer auf das Let's Play. Ja, ich danke euch allen dafür, dass ihr zuguckt. Und wir sehen uns einfach das nächste Mal wieder. Auf Wiedersehen.